There it is. So joining us this evening is Dr. Fred Luskin, author and director of Stanford University Forgiveness Projects. Well, I could go on and list his very impressive credentials and extensive experience. He has told me he prefers to be introduced as just Fred. So without further ado, I introduce to you Fred.
Yeah, I like that. Hi. I am the director of the Stanford Forgiveness Projects, and the Stanford piece makes it a lot more impressive than it actually is. But it has enabled me to get attention for the work that never would have happened if it didn't occur out of Stanford. I know without any hesitation that my affiliation with that university gave me a platform to speak about forgiveness that I never would have had otherwise. I was explaining why I have the Stanford background. I usually don't, but I had to give a talk this morning where I was supposed to sound really official. And it was the Stanford University School of Business, and they like to be very official. I started the Stanford Forgiveness Project 25 years ago for two corresponding reasons. One, I was miserable because I couldn't forgive. And it's not a pleasant place to be unable to forgive. It's a little bit of a hell. And unfortunately, I was in that little bit of a hell for a couple of years. My closest friend in the world had betrayed me. And I didn't know how to cope with that. And I did what we all do when either we have serious loss or serious problems related to what we want or hope. If we don't have some place of acceptance and forgiveness, then we tend to respond with either bitterness or self-pity. I was better than some. I did both bitterness and self-pity, but many people choose one or the other. They take adverse life events and turn them into pity parties and poor me stories, or they turn them into blame. Like, if it wasn't for this, if it wasn't for that, if they hadn't done whatever they did, then I would not be in the position I'm in. The cost, though, is stronger than many of us might think. And the first part of the Forgiveness Project was me healing myself, getting over the bitterness and I'm going to say even moving on with my life in a way that I never would have thought possible. And moving on has nothing to do with denying the pain or the hurt or anything. It has to do at some level with making peace with the fact that every single human life has suffering. And there is nothing that one can do about that very basic truth. That every single human life has suffering in it. And I've been teaching this for a long time, and I've taught to an unimaginably diverse groups and people about this. We've done research with mothers who have had their children murdered. We've done projects like after the World Trade Center attacks in New York. I've done work in the country of Colombia. We've done work in Sierra Leone after their civil war. human beings are incredibly vulnerable. Now, I know some of you have cancer or have healed from it. One of the difficulties that we all face, and it's irrespective of what it is that you're facing. So many of you were sick where maybe your body didn't behave in the way you wanted, or maybe some of you didn't receive the best medical care. I mean, I don't know what there would be to have issues with, or maybe the people close to you were not supportive and caring. What we have found is that the way that people make themselves the most stuck is by dramatically exaggerating their personal issue and limiting their compassion to all the people on the planet who suffer from different issues. And this is a very, very hard nut to crack. That we have seen, I mean, I have seen more, I don't even know what the word is, difficult life experiences expressed to me, shown to me. I've seen people act in incredible cruelty. I've seen people suffer losses that I don't have any understanding of why they've had those experiences. But the ones that get through it somehow have a capacity to universalize the suffering. So it's not just, well, this sucks because of what happened to me. What happens is people recognize that they're part of the human experience of pain and suffering. You know, in the Buddhist teachings, the first of the Four Noble Truths is some derivative of everything is suffering. You know, there's loss and pain in everything. There's a very basic, unsatisfactory nature to life because one, things change all the time, and two, we have so little control over things. So many of you who were sick, you probably recognize that there was less, I'm not going to say we don't have influence, we have a lot of influence, but we don't control, and things happen to us. And I'm not saying even that like the universe is a random, like I don't know what, but we are vulnerable to suffering. People we love will die. People will not behave in the way we hope they will. You can get hit by a bus. For many years, I worked as a researcher in preventive cardiology at the Stanford School of Medicine. And that's why I have this silly little picture behind me. And one of the things that we would recognize in our work was we were interested in preventing heart disease. And so we'd get people to eat the best diet as we could and manage their stress and get sleep and exercise and do all the right things. And there is abundant evidence that those are good choices for your health. And even with the best of choices, sometimes you get cardiovascular disease. Sometimes you make the best choices and you go to your doctor and he tells you that you're perfectly healthy. You walk out the door and you trip. The hardest, one of the really hard parts about life is its certainty of ending and its uncertainty of how we get there. And that is a lot for human beings to hold. So one of the ways that we hold that is by tightening and toughening up, by sometimes becoming bitter and mistrustful, sometimes just armoring ourselves physically. What we miss from that, though, and this is what is so obvious from the act of forgiving whatever it is that is causing your suffering. And this sounds really like trivial, new agey, and in some ways it is. But there's a truth that you can't just protect yourself from pain. Because when you protect yourself from pain, you also protect yourself from love and beauty. You can't just shut down one channel. And this is one of the great experiments that human beings try to do to handle their vulnerability and their lack of control, is they hold grudges. They become hard. You know, if it wasn't for this, I'd be okay. If it wasn't for that, I'd be fine. It's sensible, but ultimately doesn't work. It's sensible, it is, but it ultimately and unfortunately doesn't work in the way we would hope. Because again, by protecting ourselves from threat, we also protect ourselves from unexpected delight. And it is rarely talked about. And it is certainly rarely articulated that when you choose to let go of grievances or grudges or those kind of burdens, you do gain a certain degree of freedom, but you don't gain any more certainty about how life is going to come out. You just change your bet. So instead of betting that if I just stay tight and in control and somewhat mistrusting, then I'll protect myself from being hurt again, that's a bet. You shift the bet to, well, you know, shit happens. And I'm going to do my best to try to accept that and offer some trust and hope. And it's just a different bet. There's no certainty. And there is something really interesting about when people change their bets. And we have found through decades now of teaching people that you can change your bet a little. You can let go to some degree of antagonism about what life has handed you. You don't have to love everything that you've experienced, but you can let go of some of the antagonism towards some of the things that you've experienced. So I did forgive my friend. I did. We're now good friends again. I also used what had worked for me to do research on whether what worked for me would work for other people. And after decades of practice and training and doing research, I can tell you that it does. That forgiving the unpleasant parts of your life frees you to get more nurturance from the more pleasant parts of your life. That's what it does. It doesn't wave a magic wand. It doesn't say everything's going to be fine in the future. I mean, I remember when we were developing this stuff, people would come to our classes and they'd be Like, people would come, you wouldn't believe the asshole that I married. And this guy was like the worst partner in the history of planet Earth. And then somebody else from the other side of the room would say, wait, you never met my ex-husband. He's the worst partner in the history of planet Earth. And then somebody else would jump up and say, hey, you're both like, out of left field. I got the worst. But we saw that it was what people do with unforgiveness is a kind of race to the bottom. This was so bad. This was so painful. I can't open back up. And we saw that by offering just the smallest of shift, we could remind people that, you could have had the worst ex-husband on the history of the planet. 5 years later, you could try with somebody else, and they could make that first husband seem like Mahatma Gandhi. Like, you just don't know. And so forgiveness, this is not our definition, but it's the best definition. And some of you may have heard it. It's giving up all hope for a better past. That's what forgiveness is. It's giving up all hope for a better past than the one you had. And that past can be 15 minutes ago. It's giving up not just all hope, but desire to punish that past. Because when you punish that past, you're actually just punishing yourself. Like, how do I describe this? I mean, we do, long trainings. So I'm giving you a very quick intro to a method of forgiveness. But forgiveness is giving up all hope for a better past, which means you start with the life you have now. And you look at it in whatever way you can as the best opportunity you have, whatever that is, to be at peace with your life. Forgiveness, by giving up all hope for a better past, means that you are actually at peace with your life. In terms of, relative to speaking in front of a cancer group, we are involved, and again, I've done all sorts of things, but we're working with a Midwestern hospice to teach people with really serious and end-stage cancer to forgive, so they can make peace with their life, their actual life. Not the one they wish they had, but the one they actually had. Because that's the only life you can be at peace with, is the one you have. Forgiveness is what we call it, is making peace with the parts of your life that you didn't like. Making peace with the word no. That's our definition of forgiveness. Making peace with the word no, meaning the times when you didn't get what you wanted. Forgiveness is making peace with that in the present moment. It's not condoning bad behavior. It doesn't mean reconciling with people who might have hurt you. It's the affirmative desire to be at peace and resolved with your life, the painful and the good parts. It is, and how do I put this? It's a humility of acceptance of the suffering, again, that everyone faces. You know, I remember leading groups where we did groups where, again, mothers would come in and who had their children murdered. And we'd have to say, well, what does forgiveness mean? It doesn't mean that it's okay that they murdered your kid. And it doesn't mean that you got to go hug and kiss the person who might have shot your son. But it means that in this brief experience of life, on the one hand, you had children. On the other hand, you've had wonderful experiences, and you've suffered this brutal loss. Do you want that loss to be your legacy? Do you want the loss to so overwhelm all the beauty that life has offered you? If you don't, then you need to make peace with that and forgive it so that you can move on from defining yourself as being harmed by that, which, and please, it doesn't mean for a second like somehow you can forget that you've had cancer, or you can forget that somebody hurt your kid. You can't forget that, and you don't ignore it. But it doesn't have to like blot out other experiences. So we would, and this is our image that we came up with about forgiveness. Non-forgiveness is like an eclipse of the sun. Like there's this beautiful, yellow, radiant heat experience. And then we put our wounds and grievances between us and receiving that warmth. So I can't feel the sun because I'm sick. I can't feel the sun because my husband didn't love me. I can't feel the sun because my children weren't whatever. I can't feel the sun because somebody stole money from me. Our grievances are like an eclipse. They obstruct the warmth of the sun. And then we blame the experiences for why we don't feel warm, why we're not getting the sun on us. And what we say is that forgiveness is, you can't ignore horrible things, but you can walk away from them and just see the sun again. Like you don't have to put the bad stuff or the suffering, you don't have to carry it around and constantly place it so you don't see the beauty. It takes a tremendous existential strength to recognize that we are temporary guests here. And that's it. You know, I remember telling people when I used to teach often that, you know, if you have a great life and a perfect life, one day you'll just wake up dead. You know, like no matter how perfect it is, it's going to end. So decide at some level what you want to focus on during that trip. The ways it didn't work, the ways it did work, the ways that you got more than you ever could imagine, the ways you got less than you ever could imagine. I'm going to say one more, and then I'll stop, and I'm going to do a guided imagery. But this is the worst suffering that grievances and unforgiveness bring to us, is we become so vigilant around them that we're so busy watching the way we've been mistreated, or the way we failed, or the way things let us down, that we lose the capacity to see life clearly. So we forget that it can be beautiful outside, even if bad things have happened to us. We forget that people have loved us sometimes, even though painful things have happened. And sometimes, at a more granular level, we forget that we had dinner when a couple 100 million people will go to bed tonight in the world without food. It's so easy to forget abundance. It's so easy. In particular, if you have assumed the status of victim, then you become unable to see things clearly. Now, I remember trying to teach people, really, who had had some really painful, awful things. And somebody says, "How you doing?" And you can say all sorts of things. You can complain, you can cry, you can do anything, or you can say, it's mixed. I had a good dinner. Somebody came and wished me well. And this is suffering, is part of my life. So we can't ever remove suffering, but we can learn how to hold it without it dominating. And then we can see things more clearly. We can learn to hold the injustices, so to speak, without letting them overwhelm us and make us feel special in our suffering. That's sometimes what the ego does, is if it can't think of anything else to do to make you feel special, it tries to make your suffering special. Like, wow, I have worse this. Again, before I stop for a short, just a simple meditation practice, is forgiveness is making peace with the parts of your life that weren't the way you hoped. It's an internal peace. Again, it's not condoning or making excuses for bad behavior. And it's not letting things off the hook. It's freeing us. That's the value of it. It's to free us from, I'm going to say, spending too much of our precious time and short time here frustrated. So forgiveness is about our own inner experience. So we teach, I'll try to go through really briefly then in the 20 minutes I have left or so. I'm gonna go through very briefly some of the ways that we teach this. The first is, it's very hard to forgive if your nervous system is captured by your adrenalized complaining about your life. So every time you complain, your nervous system gets a jolt of adrenaline. Every time you complain, your muscles tighten. Every time you complain, like there's brain changes that are not that comfortable. Your blood pressure spikes. I mean, you just have a stress reaction to every complaint. It's very tough because human beings, on average, spend about 75 or 80% of their day complaining. That's like an average middle-class human being. They spend between 75 and 80% of their day complaining. It's not a happy place. But the problem is the complaining triggers stress. And stress triggers habit. And your brain then takes the thing you're complaining about, and every time you go there, it creates a stress response, whether you want it or not. So whatever it is you're complaining about, after complaining about it a certain number of times, your body adrenalizes and tightens and becomes anxious around that stressor because you have trained it to be to see it as a threat. So we don't do anything without some stress management, some simple breathing, which you've all learned before. But let me do a very simple breathing practice just so I can relate this to forgiveness. So what I'm going to ask each of you is to be willing to close your eyes for like 2-3 minutes. But more important than that, put your cell phone someplace else so it's not distracting you. Unless you're on your cell phone, then that's one thing. But if you're tuning in some other way, limit your distractions. So if your cell phone is a distraction, put it away. If you have 5 other windows open on your computer, shut them. Because you can't de-stress without attention. You can't. And when your attention is pulled, you're always stressed. Like always. Because it's a sign of threat to not just be paying attention to what your life is presenting to you. So please, if you can, like, put down the toys. And then I'm going to ask you to just like pull back from whatever else and just allow yourself to pause for a moment. I mean, these are the most simple, common meditation breathing instructions, but I just want to link one to a forgiveness practice. So again, pull back, pause, and allow your eyes to close for a few moments. I'm not going to do a long meditation, but I'm going to do a moment. So please close your eyes. And just allow yourself to sit quietly. And allow your breathing to quiet. And allow your muscles to soften. Like it's what you want to do is soften, quiet, gentle, not fight. It's a form of making peace with your life. And many of you will know that when you're breathing, it's really important when you inhale to allow your abdomen to expand. In fact, that's essential. When you inhale, please allow your abdomen to expand. And when you exhale, allow your abdomen to contract. And if you can, breathe from deep in your belly, because these are the simple practices that allow you to feel safe. And again, the simplicity of when you inhale, allow your abdomen to expand. And when you exhale, allow your abdomen to contract. And then just one more piece, and this is a very common practice, just bring to your mind's eye an image of someone you really love. Just bring to your vision an image of someone you really love. And see them as lovable, as delicious, and try to feel it. Feel the affection you have. Really try to feel the affection that you have for this person. Allow your body to feel it. And then just allow that image to fade. Let go of the attention to the positive experience. And then just take a breath and allow your eyes to open. But don't fidget. Just sit for a moment. And when you sit for a moment and you recognize that if even for a moment, like you're at peace, that's forgiveness. Like you're at peace with your life, even if it's for a moment. Now you can bring back any grievance, grudge, argument that you want at any time. And you can release it at any time. Like you don't have to, it doesn't have to stay. Because it's possible for you to simply be at peace. And when you're at peace, like when you're just at peace, I'm centered, I'm connected to loving somebody. Right this moment, I'm not fighting my life. That's the experience of forgiveness. There's no argument. It's just, I had a full life. I have a full life. Some of it was pleasant. Some of it sucked. But right now, I'm not arguing with it. I'm at peace with it. And then you can see the argument return. Like, wait, I deserved a better life. Or wait, that person should have listened to me. Or wait, I shouldn't have gotten sick. And then you see yourself picking an argument with your life. You find yourself arguing with your life, and you're no longer at peace. So with some practice, then you can say to yourself, well, do I want to be arguing with my own life right now? Is that going to be of help to me? And if the answer is yes, then argue away. But if the answer is, well, maybe not, maybe I want to go back to being at peace with my life, then you'll practice things that bring you back to peace. There's no right, there's no wrong, there's no argument. It's inside of us what we're creating out of our experience. We create arguments, we create acceptance, we create hostility, we create gratitude. We create all sorts of experiences around a life. What we forget is that it's our choice. That's what we forget. It wasn't everything that happened to us wasn't our choice, but this creation around it is our choice. At least some of it in particular, at this moment, it's our choice. So that's one piece that we teach people to chill and recognize that that's what making peace is. It's being quiet and accepting inside of yourself. It's not like everything's perfect, because things are never. It's never always perfect. Nothing is always perfect. It never happens. It can't happen because it's always in flux. So that's one. Two, we teach people to argue themselves out of what we call unenforceable rules, which are all the expectations we have for life that we don't control, and we drive ourselves crazy trying to control them. So somebody lies to us and we spend 5 years saying they shouldn't have lied. People do what they want to do. But the unenforceable rules are all these ridiculous expectations that we have. And having dealt with enough suffering, I know how many people ask, why me? Like, why me? Why did this happen to me? And as far as I can see, there's no answer to that, because we don't know how the game works. We don't know if there's random stuff. We don't know. There may be karma, and every single thing that happens is perfect. We don't know. We literally have no idea. But I know lots of people who have asked, why me? And it's an unanswerable question. I mean, you've all heard the rejoinder, why not you? But we don't know why us, because we don't know the actual algorithm and accounting system. But we do know that when we think it shouldn't have happened to us, that we're getting into murky territory. Why shouldn't it happen to us? We're human. Why shouldn't normal human suffering happen to human beings? That's ridiculous. It doesn't make it pleasant, but why shouldn't it? I mean, are you different? Is your body different? Is your nervous system different? We're all people, vulnerable people. So at the heart of our unforgiveness are these unenforceable rules of all the expectations and demands for things we have no control over, and we argue with things we have no control over. We have responses that we have some control over, but like, we can't force anybody to love us. And we can't force ourselves to live forever. And we can't force, we can force not that much. We can push some. The third piece of our forgiveness, again, this is such simple stuff. I mean, we didn't develop anything. All we did was put some things together in a way that hadn't been put together so that we could help people forgive. The third is be more grateful. Balance the scale. If you're going to spend a half an hour bitching about something, spend 10 minutes saying thank you. That's it, take your hand off the bitch part of the scale and put a little bit of weight on the positive part of the scale, because you're doing it. I mean, just put some energy there. Again, there's no miracle cure for life. So let me give you I'm going to give you a gratitude imagery practice, and then I'll finish with the last part of this. So again, if you'd all pull back and be willing to quiet down again for maybe a minute and a half, maybe. And if you'd all just please close your eyes for just one more experience, please, eyes closed. And please sit still. The sitting still is crucial. I mean, not like you have to be rigid if your toe moves, but generally, sit still. And take a couple of breaths so you really calm down. And make sure you breathe through your abdomen. Allow your abdomen to expand, because if you don't do that, your nervous system does not get the signals to tell your brain that you're okay. Your brain is checking out your rate and depth of breathing for how safe you are. And that's what it's checking. And then when you've quieted down yourself, just ask yourself this question. In the last 36 hours, who's been kind to me? In the last 36 hours, just go through your life, watch your life for a minute, and just ask yourself, if I look at the last 36 or so hours, who's been kind? And you want to look, did anybody say nice things? Did anybody help me with anything? Anybody offer support? Listen to me complain? Do my laundry, cook dinner, help with the kids, whatever. You want to look for kindness. And you want to learn to find it. And then you want to choose one example of kindness. And from inside you, you simply want to say thank you. From your heart, from whatever your soul, your center, you want to say thank you for your kindness. And then you want to let go of whatever image you're holding and whatever expression of thank you. And you just want to gently allow your eyes to open again and remind yourself, like if you could slow down the videotape, people do a lot of nice things, but we haven't trained ourselves to see them. And the more you see goodness, and the more you say thank you, the easier it gets a little bit to handle life's crap, because you see it more clearly. Doesn't quite dominate the picture in the same way. And this is not minimizing how difficult life can be. And the last piece is that we simply remind people that you want to complain less. Like you want to teach yourself to like shut up if you want to complain. We used to teach when we started our training, and this is a long time ago, and we were trying to figure out how to teach this stuff. At the very beginning, we called it shut up therapy. So we would tell people, you know, if you want to tell somebody else how bad your life is, go like this. And if that wasn't sufficient, go, but deeper than that is to change the victim story into something purposeful, like some value that you can add to life. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be anything. But those four things, nothing guarantees forgiveness, but those four things help aim us. Forgiveness is as inexplicable as love. We don't really know what brings any of these really beautiful things to the fore. But if you're more grateful, if you understand that, like, you can't force things to go your way. If you quiet yourself down physically and you change the story around a little bit, you become more forgiving. I think it's just, you know, we have decades of practice and research, and you just do, you become more forgiving. And you have moments where you recognize that life is okay, even if it's not exactly the way you wanted it to be. And those are the moments of forgiveness, and then it goes away and you're back to arguing, and we're human beings. It's not simple. But there was an Indigo Girls song from years ago, I remember, called A Moment of Forgiveness. And it was the closest that I had ever seen to what it is that we teach, which is a moment of forgiveness. Like, it was a song about a lover that had dumped them and had been bad. And then, you know, she was just looking for a moment of forgiveness. And literally, that's what we can look for. Anyway, my time is just about up. If you want to chat in a question or two, I'll take it. I do have somebody coming over to join me for dinner shortly. But please, if you want to ask me something, write it there. I see one question here. Somebody been told that they're too forgiving. I don't think that's actually the issue. Sometimes we're not assertive enough. I don't know if we're too forgiving, but it's more a quality of assertiveness and drawing boundaries that's probably the issue. It's not that helpful to be grudge holding or to be bitter about the past, but it is very necessary to be able to say no and to articulate for what one wants. Those are very important. What if you're ready to forgive somebody or make peace when they're not? Well, that's called planet Earth. You know, it's like, That's what it's like living on planet Earth. The stars have to align, and they often don't. However, you can forgive and release whether somebody else does or not. You can open your heart back up, and if they want to join you, that's their choice. They don't have to. The good news is that if you really do this and they don't, then after a while, you know you're free. That you can't let them hold you back. Forgiveness does not come with an instruction manual for other people. It's a personal choice to free our own self. But sometimes it influences the way we treat other people. So they become more likely to forgive, but sometimes they don't. And sometimes you just have to say, I don't need this anymore. If you want it, that's fine. But I'd rather go through my life without it. And, then you look back and you recognize that, yeah, that was a good decision. I mean, it would have been better if they joined me, but they don't have to. Just as a parenthetical, I had one really bad partnership relationship as an adult, like a really bad relationship with an intimate partner. And it ended terribly. And I've been practicing, this was a while ago, but I've been practicing forgiveness so much that it took a while, and I complained a lot about her, and I felt sorry for myself, and then it went away. And I remember seeing her, and I just, I was free. It didn't mean I liked what she did. It didn't mean we had a good relationship. We had a terrible relationship. But I was free. It was not my problem anymore. It was just, I saw her once, I wished her well, and it was free. And I don't think she's forgiven me, but it doesn't matter. I'm free. Anyway, it's a little after 7. I hope you learned something about forgiveness. If you go on the web, there's probably 100 videos of me teaching about forgiveness, if not more, if you want to learn more. There's so many people who videoed me and put it on the web. And I've written a book called Forgive for Good, if you want to read more, but the web is free. And, there's videos all over the place. So I do. I hope you learned something. I hope you felt it was a worthwhile hour. And I thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you'll come see us in person sometime.
Thank you.